the conversation, where his primary concern was the completion of that set of transactions, the completion of the safety of the hostages. Discussion at that particular time was, I think, very legitimately a matter of concern.
Are you telling me that the President lied to us all?
I think the President was very properly concerned about what would be the effect upon the lives of hostages and the concern about the families in the time. And I think you have to give a due consideration to that.
Tom, let's get back to the overriding question in this, Senator Leahy, and that is, what did the President know about the diversion of money to the Contras, which was clearly illegal, and when did he know it? Well, this report says today that there is no evidence to show that he knew about that diversion of money. Do you know of any evidence that shows that?
No, could well be so.
Well, so you agree then that he did not?
No,
he was not involved in that in any way.
I agree. There's been no evidence that he has. If that matter was done and gone, I mean, if this thing answers, I mean, let me take a moment here. If this report, which even the people who wrote it said leaves a lot of questions unanswered, but if assuming it answers every question, you seem to feel that comfortable that it does, then there's no need for Jim McClure's committee or any other committee to even look into this.
Well, that's a very good question, Senator. Don't we know the essentials of the story now, except for what happened to the money?
I think we know a lot of the things we know. That contrary to the statements of the White House, the United States is paying ransom for hostages. Contrary to the statements of the President, we're dealing with Iran. Contrary to the assurances given to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and others, the United States had people violating the Boland Amendment.
I don't think there's any evidence of that at all.
Well,
I don't think there is any evidence of that.
Well, do you think that Ollie North didn't?
Well, there is no evidence on the record yet that there was a violation of the Boland Amendment. Now, that's one of the questions that has to be decided, and I think there is a reason for us to investigate further and to get more information.
Well, Senator McClure, let me try you once more. Now, you say that
the President... different evidence than I have about Oliver North on the question of the Contras, Jim. I mean, the fact is that he was involved, and the fact is...
Involved in what? Involved in what?
Well, read the report that your committee has received from our committee.
Well, I have already read that, as a matter of fact, and I've also looked at the report that came out of the Tower Commission.
Let me try you once more,
there is no clear evidence that the Boland Amendment was violated. Let's get that straight on the record, because I think that's absolutely important.
You don't think that's why people have been recalled from Central America? You don't think that you don't believe the open public confirmation hearings that are going on right now for the new CIA director in that regard?
With respect to whether there's a violation of the Boland Amendment, I do not believe that there's clear evidence that the Boland Amendment was violated. There's a question of what the Boland Amendment means. I think you would confess that the legislative history of it is very murky.
Let me bring you back, gentlemen, to the President. Now, Mr. McClure, Senator McClure, you said that he might have been saying these things to the American public in his speech because of his fear for the safety of the hostages, and I think that's a valid point. But now, later in the speech, the same speech, he says, and he's not, here it has nothing to do with the hostages, it seems to me, it's been widely reported that Congress, as well as top executive branch officials, have been circumvented. All appropriate cabinet officers were fully consulted, the actions were in accord with law, and the relevant committees of Congress are being or will be fully informed.
Well, one of the things the Select Committee is going to look at, and will supplement the work the Intelligence Committee has done, and supplement the work that the Tower Commission has done, is to look at the very question of what did the President know and when did he know it.
Well, obviously,
if I can use Howard Baker's
don't we know the answer to that now?
It's not a statement of fact.
What isn't a statement of fact?
The one I just read you that the President made, that all cabinet officers were fully informed. I mean, if you read the Tower Commission report...
Let's separate what the President knew at that time when he made that statement. I think it's entirely possible that that statement was factually correct at the time that it was made.
Well, it wasn't factually correct. It wasn't factually correct. It wasn't factually correct.
Secretary Schultz knew, Secretary Weinberger knew.
No, and the President knew. The law requires, in a covert action of that nature, certain people within the Congress to be notified. They had not been notified.
In a timely manner.
In a timely manner. 11 months is not timely. 11 days may conceivably.
Senator Leahy, would you as President risk the lives of hostages if you feared leaks, if you notified Congress?
The President has notified us of covert actions where far more people were at risk and lives were at risk than in this this matter, where far more serious things were happening. Not one word is ever
Well, I
leaked on
think
them.
there's another fact that's involved in that course of events, and that is, I believe it is plain from the record, that the great many people that were involved in it believed that the next step would be the final step. It was one of those that they kept
Gentlemen, I have to
strung
interrupt
out
you.
on just a little bit more.
I have to interrupt you both and tell you that we're about to take a break for a commercial, and tell the audience that we'll be back right after that.
At Sheraton, we know that little things mean a lot. That's why just one number gets you reservations at any Sheraton in the U.S. or 63 countries worldwide.
Guess who's going to land the sexiest man alive? Pam Dauber. And this week's People tells about Pam and her life before Mark Harmon. People celebrates people, like Fergie's crowning achievement as world's first Flying Duchess. Then People brings you Oliver Stone, writer-director of the ultimate war movie, Platoon. Plus, Lenin's Assassin, Part 2. How to order this 120-page Hollywood history issue, and so much more. Week after week, People celebrates people. This week, The Secret Life of Pam and Mark.
No, 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 no. We don't make terror like they do. We don't make stereo like they do. We don't make vacuum cleaner like they do. Oh, copiers, 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 copiers.
Unlike other copier companies, Mita only makes copiers. After all, we didn't get to be the fastest growing copier company by making microwaves. Mita, all we make are great copiers. Call 1-800-ABC-MITA.
The Peugeot 505 Turbo. Nothing else feels like it.
Welcome back to Crossfire. Our guests are Senator Patrick Leahy, Democrat of Vermont, a former chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Senator Jim McClure, Republican of Idaho, member of the Senate Select Committee, which will is already investigating the Iranian arms sales. Senator McClure, there's a tendency on the part of everybody, I think, to some extent, to blame all of this on Don Regan. And yet the Power Commission report today points out that the President Reagan, on his finding of January 17th, which was the legal basis for the whole thing, didn't even inform Don Regan of that finding. He kept it a secret from his own chief of staff. Now, what I would like to get you to express an opinion on is the president lying, or is he simply out of it? Does he not know what's going on?
I don't think either is true. This president very widely is perceived to delegate a lot of responsibility to aides. The finding that he signed was a piece of paper brought to him to sign. It was not a discussion document at the time that it was signed, as I understand it.
No,
and I do believe that the Tower Commission very forcefully said the people within the process did not adequately inform the president. Knowing of his management style, they should have been more forceful in presenting to him their views. And they very properly, in my opinion, said Don Regan, the chief of staff for the president, failed in his duty to the president in that respect.
Senator Leahy, following up on what Tom was asking, you sounded earlier like you think the report was soft on President Reagan. Do you think it was a whitewash?
No, I don't think it's a whitewash. I think that you had three very hard-working people who made as good a report as they could with the information they had available to them.
Which was an awful lot of information.
Which was a lot of information.
At least as much or more than you all had in the Senate Intelligence Committee.
And without the testimony of some key members, Admiral Poindexter, General Secord, Colonel North, without their testimony. Now, I suspect that Jim's committee and others will put together, if they can't get the testimony of those people, will at least get the testimony of the people around them.
But they can get the testimony of those people. All they have, wait a minute, all they have to do is grant immunity to them, and they can get their testimony.
Let me tell you something on that. I spent 8.5 years as a prosecutor. I take a very hard-line view of something like that. I don't mind taking some of the peripheral characters, people that can put together the record, giving them immunity to get it. But Colonel North, described as an American hero by the President, Admiral Poindexter, General Secord, others, these people are people who have taken a sworn oath to uphold the laws and the Constitution of the United States. I'm not about to suggest giving them immunity.
I know, but
until you've got, please let me finish, until you've gotten every single bit of information possible. If the only way you can get the final story, if you've exhausted all other avenues, then that's a question for the committee to decide. But I can't see giving them some kind of imprimatur on their activity, people sworn to uphold the laws of the United States, by giving them immunity right off the bat.
But immunity from a congressional committee would not necessarily bar prosecution, and as a matter of fact, so much evidence has already been gained against them that they could certainly be prosecuted. All three of the people you've mentioned, couldn't they?
Well, you were questioning before whether any laws were broken.
That was only by the President, though. Here we're talking about Oliver North, John Poindexter, and Richard Secord. My point is this.
I'd like to see more information before immunity was given.
Yeah, but foreigners are amazed at the inclination of Americans and the press and Congress to savage their president, to savage presidencies. Couldn't this thing be wrapped up quickly if
I would hope it would.
Immunity were granted to these
Let me say there's an area I think every one of us agree on. I would hope it can. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence has done a great deal of work. The House Committee has. We turned those over to both the House and Senate investigating committees. There are extremely good people, Republicans and Democrats, on both of those committees. And I think that there is one common thread that goes through their discussion. Certainly I've heard it from Dan Norway and Lee Hamilton and the others, is that let's wrap this thing up as quickly as it can.
Senator McClure is a member of, a distinguished member of one of the committees that Senator Leahy mentioned. It bothers me a little bit that you seem to have made up your mind on the President not lying and not being...
No, I haven't said he didn't lie. I've said there is no evidence on the record yet that indicates that he did, and that was the Intelligence Committee said they had no such evidence.
I don't know what you're lying to a
The Tower Commission came out and said exactly the same thing.
But to the American people, you say, here he is a week afterwards, a week after that speech.
Where were you on the night of November the 17th of last year?
I don't know where I was, but if I had signed a finding that we should transfer arms to the Ayatollah, I would remember it.
Well, I'm not exactly certain whether you would remember all the sequence of events that went around it.
Well, look, he says to the American people, he says that the only shipments involved were the one or two that followed my January 17th finding, and there are no other shipments with which the U.S. was involved.
The question is
we've got six.
That's six. There are some that were before that in which the United States was not involved, and let's look at that record, too, and I'm sure we will. That's one of the areas of inquiry I think we must flesh out the record that's been made in the two committees.
What about the cover-up that the Tower Commission reports was attempted? Do you think there was a cover-up attempt?
I'm not certain, and that's one thing that I'm going to review a lot more closely than I have right now, is to try to analyze what those documents really mean to which they made reference. There was apparently a memorandum that said, how are we going to present this evidence to the President and to the American public, which seems to me to indicate again that the staff may have been trying to make certain that the President was protected, but not by fully informing him, but by the way in which he was informed.
Well, we all work in different ways. I'm sure your office works differently than Senator Leahy's. But can you imagine yourself in your Senate office with a big staff, which you have, and then your committees, and they run all around you and don't tell you what they're doing and only hand you a piece of paper and say, get up and say this?
Let me put it this way. There are things and times when I have said to my staff, go do certain things. And I haven't known until it was completed exactly how they carried out that instruction. Now, obviously, if they were going to do things of very great import or that varied from my instructions, I would expect them to come back and tell me.
But Jim,
if they did not come back and tell me, how would I know?
But Jim, the bottom
that,
line
I think,
is
is part of what has happened here.
But your responsibility, Senator,
sure.
would be to know.
And the President has said, ultimately, it's my responsibility. And I don't think he's tried to shuffle that away at all. But if they didn't tell him what they were doing, it was at variance with his instructions.
Yeah, but isn't it President Reagan
Reagan
who ordered the Attorney General to get to the bottom of the whole thing?
And he did a great job of that. When virtually everything he came out with within a few days ends up being dissected and torn apart afterward.
Yeah, but you would never have known about the Contra diversion until he brought it out.
Well,
all right,
once they got the papers, the fact is,
quickly,
when the President went on television and said, in effect, we weren't paying ransom for hostages, he knew full well that's exactly what we were doing.
All right, Senator Leahy and Senator McClure, thank you very much for being our guest on Crossfire. Fred Barnes and I will be back in just a minute.
I'm Chris Curle. At the top of the hour on CNN's Prime News, Don Farmer and I will have details of the Tower Commission report today that the President did not intend to mislead the public about the Iran arms Contra aid controversy, but that he failed to control the initiative or to understand the dangers of an arms for hostages swap. And we'll look at the bad storm in the West that's now moving east. That's in a few minutes on CNN's Prime News.
Hi, listen, can you help me? I've got this really important interview in a half an hour and none of the stores are open and I forgot to pack my shoes.
Well, Mr. James, if you come down to the lobby, I'll see what I can do.
At a Sheraton Inn, you expect good value. But sometimes our employees do something that's unexpected.
What size do you wear exactly?
Just so you get great service.
Thanks for the shoes.
Okay. Good luck with the interview.
At Sheraton, we never forget that little things mean a lot.
That cool, refreshing feeling of Wrigley's Spearmint gum puts a sparkle in your eye, a spring in your step, and makes things lots of fun. It's that little lift from Wrigley's Spearmint gum. It's that little lift. Come on and get you some. That clean, fresh taste Wrigley's Spearmint's got. That little lift that means a lot. It's that little lift from Wrigley's Spearmint gum.
It's important to me to be in control, and I want control over my IRA, to move in and out of my investments as I think best. That's why I have my IRA at Charles Schwab, the discount broker. At Schwab, I can move freely from one investment to another. I can buy stocks, zero-coupon bonds, or I can move my money into a money market fund or mutual funds. I can buy what I think looks good and sell what I don't want. I like knowing I can switch investments at any time, as often as I like, and never pay a penalty. In fact, the Charles Schwab IRA doesn't have any fees. No setup, no maintenance, no penalty fees. I'd recommend the Charles Schwab IRA.
To get your free booklet on the one IRA for all your investment needs, call now 800-257-1257. That's 800-257-1257 for your free Schwab IRA booklet.
Fred, after all the work you've done today, reading the Tower Commission report, I want to give you one more quotation, get your reaction to it. Lieutenant Colonel North was involved in all our activities. He is a national hero. Ronald Reagan.
When he got back the Kelly Lauro terrorists, he was a national hero. Tom, I have the impression that you don't really like this report, and I think I know why. It's because it exonerates the president of any illegality, and it shows that this affair isn't Watergate after all, as all you liberals had said it was.
I know it's not Watergate. It has nothing to do with Watergate. It's an affair all on its own, and it is bad. From the left, I'm Tom Braden. Good night for Crossfire.
From the right, I'm Fred Barnes. Join us next time for another edition of Crossfire.
This is CNN, the world's most important network.
#1 on the West Coast, right here in your own backyard. With the car industry analysts compare to Mercedes and BMW, but costing thousands less. Yet we know just selling a lot of cars doesn't a dealership make. It must be backed by people who know and love what they're doing and care for their customers. At Tustin Acura, we've met those standards and beyond. See for yourself at Tustin Acura, Myford and I-5 in the new Tustin Auto Center.
I'm down to Mills TV for the best video value.
Like this RCA VCR with 5 video heads, all special effects and remote control, only $449. Or this Mitsubishi 40-inch projection TV with broadcast stereo and cable-ready remote, only $21.98.
Best service, best price, they'll treat you nice down at Mills TV.
Come down and visit our new audio department at Mills TV on Coast Highway in Dana Point.
Today's Ski Report is being brought to you by Dimension Cable Services, your greatest home entertainment value.
Can you choose from the greatest selection of movies ever made? Dimension Cable Television.
You'll discover the widest variety of movies anywhere on TV, like Superstation WTBS, which will show over 1,500 different titles during the next year alone. And there's more movies on CBN, Arts and Entertainment, WGN, and USA, only on Dimension Cable, your greatest home entertainment value.
Good evening, I'm Chris Curle. Coming up in 2 minutes on CNN's Prime News. We'll have extensive coverage of the Tower Commission's report today on the Iran-Contra controversy. We will look at the conclusions in the report and at their implications for the Reagan administration. And we'll have reaction to the report from the Congress and from Contra leaders and from the American public. We'll have all that and the rest of the news of the day coming up on CNN's Prime News. And in a moment, CNN's Karen Maginnis will have the national weather forecast.
It's been called Iran-Gate, the Iran-Contra Affair, and Iran scam, the Iranian arms sales. What will it mean for America? Find out as CNN continues its day-long coverage of the Tower Commission report, including a half-hour special tonight at 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern on CNN.
Well, finally, that weather system in the west is now pushing towards the east, but it's also combining with another weather disturbance in the Gulf of Mexico. Take a look at this large area of rain all the way from the Carolinas back into the Central Plains. The yellow areas indicate the heavier rainfall, as you can see here across southeastern Louisiana. Terrific thunderstorms during this hour, very strong and gusty winds. There is currently a flash flood watch in effect for the entire southeastern section of Louisiana. We'll keep you updated. I want to show you the forecast map coming up for later on Friday afternoon. This complicated weather system, this broad area of rain showers into the Tennessee, Ohio Valley, all the way down through the Gulf Coast, is part of the weather system that originated out here in the west and was gaining some strength. As you can see here, it really does start to push towards the east. And gradually, the northeast will begin to feel its effects. We'll have a few forecasts coming up for you, for the nation, for tomorrow.
This is CNN, a service of Turner Broadcasting System. This is CNN's Prime News with Don Farmer and Chris Curle. And with news from Washington, Bernard Shaw.
This report's got spies, arms smuggling, beautiful secretaries, and international intrigue. All the makings of a great Hollywood movie script. Unfortunately, it's real life, and it's at the White House.
The report